The desert sun rose slowly over the barren planet of Zorath. Its sky was painted in shades of red and orange, and jagged cliffs cut harsh shadows across the endless sand. The wind howled, carrying grains of sand that stung like tiny knives against anyone foolish enough to cross the open plains. In this unforgiving land, only the strongest or the cruelest could survive. Far in the distance, a lone figure stumbled across the dunes. Her steps were heavy and her arms were bound by thick, coarse ropes. Behind her, a massive creature dragged itself with unnatural strength, tethered to her by metal chains. Its limbs were muscular, and its body was covered in coarse brown fur. Its eyes glimmered with intelligence, and it let out a low, mournful growl each time it stumbled. The girl, Lyra, did not cry. She had cried too many times before. Pain and exhaustion had hardened her, but it had not broken her spirit entirely. Her long silver hair was tangled with sand, and her skin was scorched by the relentless sun. Every step forward was agony, but she forced herself to move, her mind focused on survival. She whispered softly to the creature, almost as if she were talking to herself. "Don't give up," she said. Her voice was barely audible above the wind. "We will survive. I promise." The creature seemed to understand. It lifted its head slightly and met her gaze, a silent bond forming between them. Though it was a beast of burden, it had an awareness that set it apart from ordinary animals. It stumbled less with each step, as if drawing strength from her presence. 10 days earlier, Lyra had been captured in the middle of her village. The alien slavers had descended like a swarm of black locusts, their ships blotting out the sun. They were cruel and efficient, leaving nothing but fear and destruction in their wake. Families were separated, homes burned, and those who resisted were punished without mercy. Lyra had tried to fight. Her species was known for agility and cunning, and she had hoped to escape. But there were too many of them, and the slavers' weapons were too advanced. They had bound her, dragged her to a massive transport ship, and taken her far from her home. Now, the slavers had decided to punish her further. They had tethered her to the creature and forced her to drag it across the harsh deserts of Zorath. Their reason was simple: humiliation, control, and a display of power. The slavers wanted to make an example of her. The first few days had been unbearable. The sun scorched her back, the ropes cut into her wrists, and her feet were raw from walking on jagged rocks and hot sand. She had been given little water, barely enough to survive, and her food had been nothing more than scraps. Every night she collapsed in exhaustion, only to wake to the same torment the next morning. But something inside her refused to break. She watched the creature carefully, noticing its movements, its breathing, and its patterns. Slowly she realized it was not entirely wild. It had intelligence, and it seemed to understand her words and gestures. On the 5th day, she began to whisper to it more intentionally, guiding it, encouraging it. She noticed that when she spoke softly, it stumbled less and even lifted its heavy head with determination. They were no longer two prisoners, one of flesh, one of muscle, but a team united in silent resistance. Meanwhile, far across the desert, a human had arrived. Ethan was not a soldier, though he had been trained once. He was an engineer by trade, traveling across planets to repair machinery and gather information. But he had a sense of justice that often drew him into trouble. Ethan had landed on Zorath to check on a communication relay that had gone silent. The planet was known for its harsh environment, and many crews had failed to maintain their equipment. But he had also heard whispers of alien slavers operating here, cruel beings who captured innocent creatures and aliens for labor and sport. The rumors gnawed at him. He didn't know why, but something about the stories of a girl being tortured tugged at his conscience. He was not a hero by nature, but he could not ignore suffering when he saw it. He traveled cautiously, avoiding patrols and scanning for signs of life. The desert was dangerous for any human. The wind could strip the skin from your bones, and predators lurked beneath the sand, waiting for prey. But Ethan was determined. He followed tracks, listened to the wind, and watched the horizon. It was on the 7th day of Lyra's torment that Ethan finally caught sight of her. From a distance, he saw a small figure struggling across the dunes, a massive creature chained to her. He could see the fatigue etched into her movements, but also the determination that kept her moving. Ethan's heart clenched. He had seen suffering before, but something about this girl was different. She was small, fragile even, yet her resolve shone brighter than the desert sun. He knew he could not leave her to this fate. He moved closer, using the dunes for cover. He observed the slavers from a distance, noting their patrols and routines. They were fewer than he had expected, careless in their overconfidence. It would not be easy, but he was capable. As the day wore on, Lyra stumbled. The ropes cut into her hands, her feet were blistered, and the creature faltered as well. She fell to her knees, letting out a soft, exhausted groan. But even then, she whispered encouragement to the creature. "You can do it," she said. "Just a little more. We will survive." The creature responded with a low growl, its large head pressing against her back as if to reassure her. In that moment, Ethan knew that the bond between them was strong. This was not just a girl dragging a beast. This was a partnership of survival, a spark of resistance against cruelty. Ethan waited until nightfall. The desert nights were cold, almost painfully so after the scorching days. The slavers had made camp, their fires casting long shadows across the sand. He approached carefully, using his tools and knowledge of alien technology to move silently. He had no weapon, not in the traditional sense, but he had gadgets, small, compact, and designed for utility. He could disable the slavers' machinery, create distractions, and manipulate the environment to his advantage. He had done similar things before, though never with a life at stake like this. Ethan watched Lyra as she slept, the ropes cutting into her wrists even in rest. The creature lay beside her, protective, breathing slowly. He felt a surge of determination. He could not fail. Not now. He waited until 2 of the slavers moved away from the camp, leaving only a few behind. Then he set his plan in motion. A small device he had brought emitted a high-frequency sound, harmless to humans but irritating to the slavers' sensitive hearing. They scrambled, confused and shouting, giving Ethan the cover he needed. He crept forward, silent as a shadow, and cut the ropes binding Lyra to the creature. She woke with a start, confusion and fear in her wide violet eyes. "Who?" she whispered, barely able to speak. "My name is Ethan," he said softly. "I'm here to help. You're free." For a moment she did not believe him. Her life had been a series of betrayals, cruelty and broken promises. But the ropes were gone. The creature looked at him without fear, and the slavers were distracted. She had a choice, to trust him or to remain bound by fear. She chose to trust. Together, they moved silently across the dunes, Ethan guiding them through hidden paths and behind rocky outcrops. The slavers were confused, searching blindly, but Ethan's knowledge of the terrain kept them ahead of danger. Lyra leaned heavily against the creature, her body weak, but her spirit ignited by hope. She whispered softly, telling the beast to stay calm and follow Ethan's lead. The 3 of them, a human, an alien girl, and a massive desert creature, moved as one, a small force of resistance against the cruelty of the slavers. As they reached a small ridge, Ethan paused. He looked at Lyra, studying her expression. She was exhausted, her body bruised and burned, but her eyes shone with a quiet fire. "You're stronger than you think," he said. "And you're not alone anymore." Lyra nodded, a small smile forming despite the pain. For the first time in 10 days, she felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps survival was not impossible. Perhaps she could be free again. But the desert was far from safe. There were predators that stalked the sands, storms that could bury them alive, and the slavers were still out there, relentless in their pursuit. Ethan knew this was only the beginning. Freeing her from the ropes was the first step, but survival in this desert would require more than courage. It would require strategy, ingenuity, and trust. Together, they prepared to move again. Ethan checked his small supplies, giving Lyra a drink of water and some food he had carried for emergencies. The creature followed, its loyalty unquestioned, sensing the change in their fortunes. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the desert in shades of deep red and purple. The night brought cold, but it also brought cover. They would move under the stars, using the darkness to hide from the slavers. Lyra whispered a quiet thanks to Ethan, but he shook his head. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "We still have a long way to go." And so, under the alien stars of Zorath, a human, an alien girl, and a massive desert creature began their journey across the dunes. They were weak, they were tired, but they were free, and in freedom, they found a spark of hope that even the harsh desert could not extinguish. Somewhere in the distance, the slavers cursed and shouted, unaware that the girl they had tormented for 10 days was already plotting her own survival. And somewhere in the darkness, Ethan and Lyra knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test their courage, their minds, and their spirits. For Lyra, the desert night was cold. The stars shone like distant fires glittering across the dark sky. Lyra wrapped herself around the creature, trying to keep warm while Ethan checked their surroundings. He wanted to ensure the slavers would not find them during the night. Every sound, the shifting sand, the distant howl of a desert predator made him alert. "We need to move before sunrise," Ethan said softly. "The slavers won't give up easily," Lyra nodded. Her hands were sore from the ropes that had cut into them. Her feet still blistered, but she felt strength returning. The creature, now calm, pressed its head against her side as if offering comfort. She ran her hand along its fur. "Thank you," she whispered, "for staying with me." Ethan smiled faintly. "You've done most of the hard work already. Now we just need to get out safely." The three of them moved quietly, slipping between rocks and ridges. Ethan led them along hidden paths, places he had scouted earlier from a distance. The desert was harsh, but knowledge of the terrain was an advantage. For 2 hours they moved without seeing anyone. Lyra began to relax slightly, though she remained alert. The wind carried the scent of sand and distant plants, but she could also smell faint traces of the slavers ahead. "They're close," she said, her eyes narrowing. "I can feel it," Ethan nodded. "Good instinct. Let's stay quiet and avoid them. We don't want to fight yet. We just want distance." They crept forward, the creature carefully stepping beside them, its hooves silent against the sand. Despite its size, it had learned to move with surprising grace. Lyra could see it thinking, observing, and responding to danger. She whispered encouragement, and it obeyed, staying close and protective. The sun began to rise, painting the horizon in fiery orange and red. The desert heat was already building, and the trio needed to find shelter soon. Ethan spotted a narrow canyon that led to a shaded area. "Quickly, this way," he urged. "We can rest there before the day becomes too hot." They moved swiftly, slipping into the canyon just as the sun rose fully. The shadows offered temporary relief, and Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted. She rubbed her feet, wincing at the blisters. The creature lay down beside her, its massive body providing shade and warmth. "You're amazing," Ethan said, observing her. "After everything, you're still standing. You didn't give up?" Lyra managed a weak smile. "I had to survive. I had no choice." Ethan nodded, understanding more than she realized. Survival was not easy, and the desert would test them further. But he also knew that Lyra was stronger than she thought. They rested in silence for a while, listening to the wind whistle through the canyon. Then Ethan spoke. "We can't stay here long," he said. "The slavers will search the area soon. We need to keep moving, but slowly. You'll need to conserve your strength." Lyra nodded. She had learned to trust Ethan, though she still kept a cautious distance. The events of the past 10 days had taught her that trust was dangerous but necessary. "We'll make it," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. The journey resumed mid-morning. The canyon opened into a rocky plain, and the sun's heat became intense. Lyra felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her, but she refused to stop. The creature, now fully obedient to her guidance, moved steadily beside her. Ethan carried supplies, water, food, and small tools that could help if they encountered the slavers. He kept watch constantly, scanning the horizon for any movement. His senses were heightened, aware of every shadow, every shift in the sand. By midday, they encountered a group of desert predators, large, fast-moving creatures that hunted in packs. They had glowing eyes and sharp claws, and they moved with terrifying speed. Lyra froze for a moment, unsure how to protect herself and the creature. Ethan acted immediately. He grabbed one of his devices and activated a bright, flashing light. The predators hesitated, startled by the sudden burst of energy. He then threw a small noise-making device to the side, drawing them away from the trio. Lyra watched in awe. Humans, she realized, had ways of thinking that were clever and unexpected. Ethan was not the strongest or the fastest, but he used his mind to survive, and that was just as powerful. Once the predators were gone, Ethan turned to her. "We have to move faster now. The heat will become dangerous soon." They pressed on, moving along narrow paths between rocky cliffs. The creature carried Lyra when necessary, lifting her slightly when the ground became too rough. It was clear that a bond had formed between them. The girl had been its captor for 10 days, but now she was its protector and friend. By late afternoon, they saw smoke rising in the distance. Ethan's eyes narrowed. That's the slavers. They're following the same path we took. Lyra's heart sank. She had hoped the distance they had gained would be enough. But the slavers were relentless. She could still feel the rope burns on her wrists, and the memory of being dragged for days made her shiver. We can't fight them directly, Ethan said, but we can outsmart them. Follow me. He led them to a hidden canyon, narrow and winding where the slavers' larger vehicles could not pass. The walls were high and the shadows deep. They slipped inside, hiding among rocks and boulders. Hours passed. Lyra tried to rest, but her mind was restless. The memories of the past 10 days haunted her, the heat, the pain, the chains, and the cruelty of the slavers. But she also felt a strange sense of hope. For the first time, she was not alone. Ethan watched her carefully. He knew she had been through unimaginable suffering, but he also saw resilience, something that could not be broken. Humans had faced similar challenges, and he recognized that spark in her. Night fell again, and the desert cooled. The stars sparkled, reflecting off the rocks. Ethan and Lyra moved quietly through the canyon, always alert, always aware of the danger that followed. At one point, Lyra stumbled, her legs weak from exhaustion. The creature gently nudged her forward, and Ethan caught her arm. "You're stronger than you think," he said. "We'll make it through this." She nodded, drawing strength from his words. The bond between them was growing, not just as allies, but as survivors united by a common goal. By the third night, they had traveled far from the last sighting of the slavers. But they could still hear the distant sounds of pursuit, shouts, machinery, and the occasional roar of alien predators. The desert was alive with danger, and each step forward was a test of endurance and wit. Ethan knew they needed a plan. "We can't keep running blindly," he said. "We need a place to rest safely, at least for a day, so we can recover and plan the next move." Lyra thought for a moment. She remembered a hidden oasis her people had used when traveling these deserts. It was far, but it was their best chance. "I know a place," she said. "It's dangerous to reach, but we can hide there." Ethan nodded. "Then we go there. Slowly, carefully. The creature can carry you when needed, and I'll keep watch." The journey to the oasis was grueling. The sun burned their backs during the day, and the nights were cold and full of strange sounds. They encountered predators, treacherous sand dunes, and sudden cliffs. Each challenge tested their courage, their strength, and their trust in each other. But Lyra never gave up. Each time she wanted to collapse, the creature supported her, and Ethan encouraged her. She realized that survival was not just about strength, it was about hope, intelligence, and partnership. By the fifth night, they finally reached the outskirts of the oasis. The sight of green plants and flowing water was almost magical in the midst of the harsh desert. Lyra knelt by the water, drinking deeply while the creature grazed nearby. Ethan set up a small camp, making sure they were hidden from view. "We made it," he said, his voice full of relief. "We're safe, at least for now." Lyra smiled faintly. For the first time in 10 days, she felt a sense of peace. She could rest, recover, and begin to heal from the horrors she had endured. But even in this moment of relief, she knew the journey was far from over. The slavers were still out there, and the desert was full of unseen dangers. She would need all her courage, all her strength, and all her new skills to survive the days ahead. Ethan watched her, understanding her thoughts. "We'll face it together," he said. "You, me, and the creature. No one else." The creature pressed its massive head against Lyra's shoulder as if agreeing. In that quiet moment, the three of them, human, alien, and beast, formed a bond stronger than chains, stronger than fear. They had survived 10 days of cruelty and pain. Now, in the cool night of the oasis, they could begin to plan for freedom, justice, and the hope of a better future. The oasis was small but alive. Green palms swayed gently in the night breeze, and a cool stream trickled quietly through the sand. Lyra sank beside the water, cupping it in her hands to drink. For the first time in days, her body felt relief. Her arms ached from the rope burns, her feet throbbed from the journey. But the simple comfort of water and shade made her forget, if only briefly, the pain of the desert. The creature stood nearby, alert and watchful. Its massive form blocked the small path leading into the oasis. Even at rest, it exuded power and readiness. Lyra ran her hand over its fur. "We survived, my friend," she said softly. "We are still alive." Ethan sat beside her, carefully inspecting the supplies he had brought. He had salvaged some from his own pack and scavenged what little the desert offered. "We can rest for a day," he said. "Then we need to move. The slavers are smart. They will look for us in obvious places." Lyra nodded. Her mind raced. Thinking about the past 10 days and the struggles ahead, she was free from the chains, but the scars on her body and spirit were deep. Still, she felt something growing inside her. A spark of determination, a fire that refused to die. "You fought well," Ethan said, glancing at her. "Not many could survive what you did, and you've earned a chance to plan your next move." Lyra smiled faintly. "I had help. From him." She gestured toward the creature whose eyes glimmered in the moonlight. The bond between them had grown stronger, almost unspoken, yet unmistakable. The next morning, the oasis was peaceful, but Ethan knew it wouldn't last long. He rose early and surveyed the desert. In the distance, he noticed faint movement, dust rising from the sand. A patrol of slavers searching the area. "They're close," he whispered. "We need to leave now or they will find us." Lyra quickly gathered her strength. She had rested, but her body was still weak. She climbed onto the creature's back carefully, and Ethan held her steady. The creature lowered its head, ready to move. They slipped from the oasis, moving quietly along hidden paths Ethan had scouted the night before. The desert was relentless. Rocks, dunes, and sudden cliffs challenged their progress. But they moved as a team, each step calculated and careful. Hours passed, and the patrols were still behind them, unaware that the girl they had tormented was now riding free. Guided by a human and a loyal creature, the slavers had underestimated their determination, and that mistake would cost them. By midday, they reached a narrow canyon, a natural barrier that would slow anyone following them. Ethan knew this was the best place to set up a defensive position if needed. "We can rest here and plan," he said. "If they catch up, we'll be ready." Lyra climbed off the creature, stretching her tired limbs. She examined the canyon walls and the shadows that could hide them. "We need a trap," she said, thinking quickly. "Something to stop them, even briefly." Ethan nodded, impressed. "Good idea. Let's use the terrain. There are loose rocks we can push to create obstacles. That will slow them down." Together, they prepared the canyon. Ethan rolled boulders into precarious positions, while Lyra used smaller stones to make noise in the opposite direction. The creature watched, ready to react at a moment's notice. By afternoon, they were ready. The first of the slavers appeared at the mouth of the canyon. Lyra and Ethan waited silently, hidden in the shadows. The slavers' confidence was obvious. They thought the girl was still weak and helpless, unaware that she had allies now. Ethan gave Lyra a small nod. She whispered to the creature, and it stepped forward, its massive form suddenly visible, casting a shadow that stretched across the desert floor. The slavers stopped, startled. Then Ethan triggered a device that caused a loud clatter from the rocks they had positioned earlier. Boulders tumbled down the canyon walls, creating obstacles and confusion. The slavers shouted, struggling to keep balance as stones blocked their path. Lyra seized the moment. She leaped onto the creature, holding tight as it charged forward through the narrow canyon. Ethan followed, using his devices to create more distractions, lights, noises, and small explosions that drew attention away from their escape route. The slavers tried to pursue, but the canyon worked against them. They slipped, fell, and struggled to navigate the obstacles. Lyra watched from the creature's back, her heart pounding, knowing that every second counted. As they emerged from the canyon, the desert stretched endlessly before them. Ethan guided them along hidden paths, using his knowledge of the terrain to avoid open areas where the slavers could use their vehicles. Lyra clung to the creature, feeling both fear and exhilaration. She had survived so much already, but this felt like a true test of her courage. Hours later, they reached a rocky plateau that provided a temporary safe haven. The sun was setting, painting the sky in deep orange and purple hues. The desert's harsh beauty was breathtaking, but there was little time to admire it. They needed to rest, eat, and recover. Ethan set up a small camp, carefully hiding it from view. Lyra drank deeply from her water supply, and the creature grazed on the sparse desert plants. For a brief moment, the world felt peaceful, but danger was never far. Ethan knew that the slavers would not give up. They were relentless, cruel, and cunning. It would only be a matter of time before they discovered the girl was gone and began tracking them more aggressively. "We need a plan for when they catch up," Ethan said, sitting beside Lyra. "We can't keep running forever." Lyra nodded. "We'll fight if we have to. But we need to be smart. The desert can be our ally if we use it right. Ethan smiled faintly. Exactly. We'll use everything at our disposal. Terrain, traps, and our wits. Together we're stronger than they think. Night fell again and the stars illuminated the desert. Lyra sat by the fire, her thoughts racing. She had endured 10 days of dragging a creature through harsh sands, surviving hunger, thirst, and pain. Now, with Ethan and the creature by her side, she felt a spark of hope that had been absent for so long. The creature lay beside her, protective and calm. Lyra stroked its fur, feeling a deep bond. She realized that survival was not just about strength. It was about trust, unity, and determination. Suddenly, a distant sound reached their ears, a low, mechanical hum, growing louder. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "They found us," he said quietly. "Get ready." Lyra's heart raced, but she did not panic. She climbed onto the creature's back, gripping tightly. Ethan checked his devices, ensuring everything was ready. The desert, which had been their enemy, would now become their shield. As the slavers appeared on the plateau, their vehicles kicking up dust, Ethan and Lyra sprang into action. The creature charged forward, its massive form plowing through the sand. Lyra shouted, guiding it toward hidden rocks and narrow paths where the vehicles could not follow easily. Ethan used his devices to create obstacles. Rocks tumbled. Lights flashed and small sonic bursts disoriented the slavers. They were not expecting this level of intelligence and coordination. The chase was tense, each second filled with danger. Lyra's mind raced, thinking of ways to outmaneuver the slavers. She whispered commands to the creature, which responded perfectly, weaving between rocks, climbing steep ridges, and avoiding traps. Hours passed and the slavers were still pursuing, but their confidence began to falter. They were unprepared for the combination of human ingenuity, alien courage, and the loyalty of a powerful creature. Finally, as night approached, Ethan led them to a hidden cave system in the cliffs. The entrance was narrow, almost invisible from the plateau. They slipped inside, breathing heavily but relieved. Lyra dismounted, her legs shaking from exhaustion. She leaned against the creature, feeling the warmth and strength it provided. Ethan secured the cave entrance, ensuring no one could follow easily. "We're safe for now," Ethan said, though his eyes remained alert. "We can rest, recover, and plan the next move." Lyra nodded. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to relax. She had survived 10 days of brutal punishment, endured the desert, and escaped the slavers. Now she could begin to heal, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. The creature lay beside her, its head resting on her lap. She stroked its fur, feeling a deep connection. It had carried her, protected her, and fought alongside her. They were more than companions, they were a team. Ethan watched them, a small smile on his face. "You've come a long way," he said, "and this is just the beginning. Together we can face whatever comes next." Lyra looked at him, gratitude and determination in her eyes. "I will fight," she said softly. "I will survive, and I will make sure no one else suffers as I have." Ethan nodded. "That's the spirit. And you won't be alone. We'll face it together, human, alien, and creature." The desert outside was still harsh and unforgiving, but inside the cave, there was hope. They had survived, they had escaped, and they had formed a bond that was stronger than any chain, stronger than any cruelty. And somewhere in the distance, the slavers continued their search, unaware that the girl they had tormented was no longer their prisoner. She was a survivor, stronger and wiser, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The rescue was complete, but the journey was far from over. Lyra, Ethan, and the creature would need all their courage, intelligence, and unity to survive the desert and the dangers that awaited beyond. But for now, they rested. The fire crackled, the stars shone above, and a small spark of hope burned in the heart of the desert. The cave was quiet now, except for the gentle trickle of water from a small underground stream. Lyra sat beside the creature, her hand resting on its massive head. The past days had been a blur of pain, exhaustion, and struggle. Yet now, for the first time in what felt like forever, there was peace. Ethan checked the entrance again, making sure no slaver had followed them. The desert outside was silent, the stars casting their pale light over the sand. He turned to Lyra. "You've done more than survive," he said quietly. "You've endured and adapted. That's something few could manage." Lyra looked at him, her violet eyes filled with both gratitude and determination. "I didn't do it alone," she said. "I had him," she gestured to the creature, "and I had you in a way. You gave me hope when I had none left." Ethan smiled faintly. "We make a good team. But we can't stay here forever. The slavers will keep looking and the desert is unforgiving. We need a plan to leave this planet safely." Lyra nodded. "There's a place far from here," she said. "A hidden valley where my people once traveled. It's safe, at least for now. If we can reach it, we can recover fully." Ethan agreed. "Then we move at dawn. We'll travel carefully, and we'll use the terrain to our advantage. They won't catch us if we're smart." That night they rested. Lyra lay against the creature, feeling its steady breathing while Ethan kept watch near the cave entrance. The silence was a luxury after 10 days of constant pursuit, pain, and fear. When dawn broke, the desert was bathed in pale golden light. They emerged from the cave, ready to move. The creature stepped forward confidently, sensing their direction. Lyra climbed onto its back, her body still weak but her spirit stronger than ever. Ethan followed on foot, carrying supplies and keeping a careful watch. The desert stretched endlessly before them, with jagged cliffs, shifting dunes, and hidden paths. Each step was a challenge, but each step brought them closer to freedom. By midday, they faced their first real obstacle, a deep canyon that cut across their path. The cliffs were steep and the desert winds howled fiercely. The creature paused at the edge, sniffing the air and assessing the danger. Lyra whispered to it, guiding it carefully. With patience and trust, they navigated the narrow ledges, the creature moving steadily while Lyra held on tightly. Ethan assisted from behind, helping to stabilize the creature when necessary. As they emerged on the other side, they heard a distant roar, the unmistakable sound of the slavers' vehicles. They had tracked them, persistent and unrelenting. "They're close," Ethan said, his voice calm but tense. "We need to make a stand or at least slow them down." Lyra looked around and spotted a narrow valley with jagged rocks and loose sand. "Here," she said. "We can use the terrain. They won't move easily through this area." Together they set their plan into motion. Lyra directed the creature to move through the valley, kicking up sand and rocks to create natural obstacles. Ethan used small devices to create flashes of light and noise, confusing the slavers and forcing them to slow their pursuit. The slavers were taken off guard. They expected a weak, frightened girl, not a team of clever, coordinated survivors. Their vehicles struggled in the loose sand, and several of their patrols stumbled over hidden rocks and fallen debris. Lyra and the creature moved swiftly, navigating the valley with ease. Ethan stayed close, directing them and creating distractions whenever needed. The slavers' frustration grew as they realized their prey was no longer helpless. By evening, they had gained a significant distance. The desert was quiet once again, and the trio paused to rest. Lyra drank water, the creature grazed nearby, and Ethan checked the surroundings. "We did well," Ethan said, "but we're not safe yet. The valley ahead is dense with cliffs and shadows. It's our best chance to hide for a few days and recover." Lyra nodded. "I can feel it. We're close to the hidden valley I mentioned. If we make it there, we'll have time to plan our next steps." The journey continued through the night. The stars guided them and the creature moved with confidence, carrying Lyra through the rocky terrain. Ethan remained vigilant, listening for any signs of pursuit. The desert, though harsh, was beginning to feel less like an enemy and more like a landscape they could use to their advantage. As dawn approached, the hidden valley appeared in the distance. Green patches of vegetation broke the monotony of sand and rocks, and a small stream wound its way through the cliffs. It was a safe haven, a place where the slavers would find it nearly impossible to follow. Lyra smiled, feeling hope rise in her chest. "We made it," she whispered. "Finally," Ethan grinned. "We did, but we need to move carefully. The valley is safe, but we can't assume the slavers won't find other ways to track us." They entered the valley cautiously, the creature guiding them through narrow paths and hidden groves. The air was cooler here, and the vegetation provided shade and shelter. Lyra felt a sense of relief she hadn't experienced in days. For the next 2 days, they rested and recovered. Lyra tended to her wounds with supplies Ethan had, and the creature regained its strength. Ethan used the time to repair some of his equipment and prepare for the journey ahead. During this time, Lyra shared stories of her people and the desert. She spoke of hidden paths, ancient shelters, and the ways her ancestors had survived the harsh environment. Ethan listened carefully, realizing that her knowledge was invaluable. "You are resourceful," he said. "Your people survived here for generations, and now you've survived these slavers. Together we're unstoppable." Lyra smiled faintly. "I learned a lot from surviving alone, but I never thought I'd find someone like you to help me. You've changed everything." Ethan nodded. "We've changed each other, and will continue to do so. The slavers won't stop, but neither will we." On the third day, Ethan and Lyra prepared to leave the valley. They needed to find a more permanent safe location and ensure that the slavers could not track them. The desert was still dangerous, but now they had knowledge, strategy, and unity on their side. As they moved through the valley, Lyra noticed strange footprints, smaller, human-like prints mixed with alien shapes. "Someone else is here," she whispered. Ethan examined the tracks. Not slavers, but someone traveling through the desert. Could be another group of survivors or explorers. Either way, we should be careful. They followed the path cautiously, keeping hidden. Soon they saw a small group of alien refugees huddled together and trying to stay safe. Lyra's heart swelled with hope. She had seen so much cruelty, but here were others who had survived. Ethan approached slowly, raising his hands to show they meant no harm. Lyra followed, keeping the creature calm beside her. The refugees looked up, fear in their eyes, but relief followed when they saw Lyra. "You survived," one of them said softly. "We thought the slavers had taken everyone." Lyra nodded. "I did, and we can help each other. Together we are stronger." Ethan smiled. "Exactly. We're not alone anymore. The desert can't defeat us if we work together." Over the next few hours, they shared food, water, and stories. The refugees were weak and tired, but their spirits lifted seeing Lyra and Ethan. The creature moved among them, protective but gentle, sensing their need for safety. Lyra realized something important. Survival was not just about escaping danger. It was about building trust, forming alliances, and protecting those who could not protect themselves. Ethan looked at her. "You've grown so much in these days. Not just in strength, but in leadership. You inspire hope." Lyra blushed faintly. "I only survived because I had help. And now I want to help others survive too." Together they planned the next move. They would leave the valley carefully, using hidden paths and their knowledge of the desert to avoid detection. The slavers were still out there, but with allies, strategy, and determination they could face whatever came next. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley. Lyra stood beside the creature, looking at the horizon. For the first time in days, she felt hope, not just for herself, but for the others who could now survive. Ethan joined her. "We'll face the slavers if they come, but for now we rest and prepare. Tomorrow we move toward real safety." Lyra nodded, feeling the warmth of trust, unity, and hope. The desert was harsh, but they had conquered it together. They had survived cruelty, pain, and exhaustion. And now, they were ready for the future. Stronger, wiser, and united. The night was calm, the stars shining bright above the hidden valley. Lyra, Ethan, and the creature rested together, ready for whatever challenges awaited them. The desert had tested them, but it had also forged a bond that could not be broken. Somewhere far away, the slavers continued their search, unaware that the girl they had tortured for 10 days was no longer a victim. She was a survivor, a leader, and a symbol of hope. And as the stars shone above the valley, Lyra whispered softly, "We are free, and we will remain free. Together." The fire flickered gently. The creature breathed steadily, and Ethan watched over them, a quiet smile on his face. The desert could no longer harm them. They had found strength, unity, and hope. The journey was not over, but for the first time, the future felt bright. And in that hidden valley, amidst the harsh desert of Zorath, freedom had been reclaimed.